Still trying to get over it. An emotional and exhausting day in an emotionally exhausting couple of years to be a Welsh rugby fan. This has been one of the most... No, it has been the most draining year as a rugby fan I think I've ever had to go through by a distance. In terms of the demand it's asked of you as a Welsh rugby fan.
Yeah.
And so, look, there have been some people who've been critical of Wales celebrating as much as they did and fans being celebratory on the final whistle. Frankly, we needed this.
Our second men's win since the end of 2023.
Yeah.
And at that point, beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah. Other than a World Cup warm-up game against England, which are the least meaningful games, fine, whatever, Wales hadn't won a game in Cardiff since the 2022 Six Nations.
Yeah. Which is insane. And
yeah, no,
again,
2022 Autumn Internationals.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still 3 years since they won a game in Cardiff.
Absolutely
other than,
insane.
Yeah, one World Cup warm-up friendly.
And yeah, to address this early days, once again, there's a lot of players in that team who've either not won playing for Wales, who've not won playing at home. A lot of people like players like Rees-Zammit and Jarrod Evans, for instance. I saw Grav of Rock and Roll pointing this out. People who were previously outcast from the Wales squad, who never thought they'd have the opportunity to play for Wales again, let alone win for Wales again. And ultimately, the most important thing, I think, as somebody who supports Wales, I want to see 23 players who care about winning for Wales, who care about playing for their country and doing well. Yeah. And ultimately, that's more important than even necessarily winning. It's having players who it clearly means something to them to play for Wales. And again, we saw a lot of people on that full-time whistle who clearly, this meant a lot to. And I think that's the most important bit is we need to be able to celebrate this. And if Wales were still as good as they were in 2019, we wouldn't be celebrating.
No,
it would be swiping the sweat off our foreheads and going, right, okay, we'll move on to the next one. But at the moment, that is our level. Yeah. That is Wales's level, is playing against teams like Japan, and coming away with a win is a huge result.
Yeah, and you've got to take what you get, can't you? Ultimately, I'm a fan. And so I am there to celebrate when good things happen.
100%.
And that is what happened here. Now, you can be critical of Wales. There's a lot to be critical of in this performance, in this team overall. Steve Tandy, at full time, I really liked this, was obviously appreciative of the win, enjoying that, but was quite angry. Press conference, he was quite angry. Because he said all he wanted of his players was the best performance than last week and to be getting better every week, and he felt like he didn't get that. And I would agree with that, right? I thought Wales were better against Argentina than they were in this game against Japan.
I think largely.
And they were against Argentina, there were a handful of issues that were real problem areas. Against Japan, there were lots of little bits that added up, right? Rather than it being like, oh, there's one or two things, if we fix that, then there's something solid here. And it is appropriate that Steve Tandy is the guy who is angry about this and who is on this, because he is the guy who's tasked with fixing it.
He's the guy who's responsible, really.
Yeah, the players, they've just gone for 80 minutes of effort.
Yeah.
They came out on top for the first time at home in 3 years. Of course they're going to be happy. Yeah. Fans, of course we're going to be happy. We've been miserable. Tandy is the one who should be angry, and he was the one who was.
Yeah.
And I think we can get into Wales and Japan and how they played in a moment, but just I think that's important to preface. And you've got to say something, right? This Welsh team, kind of, Sam Warburton's brought this up repeatedly, felt like they threw in the towel a few times under Gatland 2.0. You had that game against Australia last year where it felt like they gave up.
100%.
England felt like they gave up. And it isn't a reflection on the players. There were moments in which you had individual players playing hard, but it felt like they lost hope.
Burnt out.
Yeah. And it hasn't felt like that's the case at all in either of these two games. And that is a huge credit to Wales so far.
The fascinating thing, you could argue it felt like that in the 81st minute against Argentina. Yeah. But at that point, that is the end of the game. Yeah. The interesting thing is here, because again, as a Welsh fan, I think my brain is conditioned like this. There was a point where I felt like that was about to happen in this game when Japan had just taken the lead and it looked like they were about to score another try. Yeah. And I said to you, I texted you during the game saying I don't get the impression we're in this game at the moment. We don't feel like we're part of this. It feels like Wales are spectating this game a little bit at the moment. And I think that was just the part of my brain that is used to what was happening in Gatland 2.0 era, taking over, where it was, that's the point in the game where Wales would give up. And again, I think that's the satisfying thing, because you could argue, and I think I probably would argue this, that across the 80 minutes, Japan were the better team. And I think, a lot of people have said that, and that's probably fair to say. And for Wales to still come out on the right side of the scoreline is a really great reflection, because in past, that game would have gotten away from them.
Dewi Lake, the captain's run, was interviewed and asked what a win would mean. And he said the most important thing about a win is it would prove to us that our game model works and can win us games, and it help us commit to it and build on it going forward.
Yeah.
Right? And that is what happened here, is Wales were shown that if they stick to the way they're being taught and coached to play, then they can get results. And that was very much not the case under Gatland. It felt like they would go away from that because the way they were being coached to play wasn't working. And it didn't work. And it was fundamentally flawed in countless levels that we discussed at length in past over the last few years. And it feels a bit like you've got the players buying in here, and they will probably play better against the All Blacks against South Africa for this result, for this game, for that one moment of Jarrod Evans kicking that goal.
Yeah, I hope
and we can break down some of the issues, and I think there are plenty. I think there is one big issue for me, though, which is the high ball.
Yeah.
And we talked about it last week from a receiving end.
The backfield generally is a mess.
I think it's more than that. I think it's offensive as well.
Yeah.
Not as in I'm angry about it, but just as in I think it's going forward. Yeah. It's also an issue. The backfield is an issue. So last week we highlighted, and we talked about this in a preview, Blair Murray caught 1 out of 8 high balls hung on him by Argentina. He was bad. He was not great again this weekend. However, Matt Sherritt said in the lead up to this game, we need to do more to protect him. And we had little bits of that over this game. They did indeed put more players in the way. They would literally just leave more bodies. We speculate this might be the case in the preview. They left more bodies in the way, so the Japanese chaser would need to slalom more to get to him. They would still get there in time because you can't block properly anymore in the way you could 18 months ago.
Yeah.
They changed that law a year ago. That is still not the case. However, the main protection they added was, one, like, yes, they bring forwards around to the blind side if Japan are setting with a box kick, which opens up space on the open side, which is something Japan weren't spotting, but I would imagine All Black Springboks will. The other one is they would leave Ollie Cracknell next to him pretty much at all times, so that Blair Murray wouldn't have to regather a high ball himself, he could just knock it backwards. So Wales' fullback is so bad under the high ball, they're taking their top tackler out of the defensive line and putting him in the backfield so that he can mop up behind him.
It's your get out of jail free card. Not free,
so,
but you get out of jail card.
If you're the Springboks or you're New Zealand, who are Wales' next two opponents, or indeed when we get to the Six Nations, England, Ireland, etc., you're looking at that and you're going, oh, so they stack their blind side and they drop their top tackler out the line in order to cover
have them close to each other. So it's not like they're covering the full width.
Yeah. Like, Cracknell would consistently, time on time, wait next to Murray so he could regather it if Murray knocked it backwards, which, in fairness, worked for Wales. Wales regathered much more high balls.
It's a short-term fix.
Blair Murray kept hold of one high ball that was hung on him, but he happened to knock 3 of them backwards, and 2 of them landed in the hands of Ollie Cracknell because he was there to mop up. So that is a much better return rate because you're not focusing your fullback to catch. However, if your fullback is so bad on the high ball, you have to move your top tackler out of the line and contort your defensive line around it. Teams like the All Blacks will spot that and will execute to that. Like, if you're Bowden Barrett, you hang a few high balls on Blair Murray to get into that pattern, check they're still doing that, and then you go back to playing to width.
Or you bang it behind Cracknell because it'll be slower to field that ball. Or you look at those cross-field kicks because there's going to be space open up there because the defensive line will be tightened a little bit.
So, yes, they managed to do something to solve the problem, but it's not worth it.
No.
It's not worth it. If you just put Jacob Beetham or Cam Winnett in at fullback, right, they're much better on the high ball. They most likely just win those catches, and then you don't need to drop Cracknell back. Yeah. And so that becomes a bit of an issue for Wales, is that opening chance there, the fact that Murray is still bad under the high ball. However, Japan also found other areas in which Wales are bad under the high ball. And Rees-Zammit, much awaited return to the starting jersey, having come off the bench last week. I mean, good off the bench, like I thought he played well.
Yeah. And again, Wales have missed him because he's a
massively.
raw talent, and having somebody in the back three who is rapid and backs himself from everywhere is huge.
Scores tries, brilliant finisher.
Wales don't have that quality of player across the park very often. He's a brilliant player. He's a British and Irish Lion.
With Jack Morgan injured, Thomas Williams is the only other bullshit capable player in the team. Like, there's a few players, like every now and again, Dewi Lake will produce like a bullshit carry.
So Lewis Rees-Zammit's return to this team incredibly welcomed on the surface.
However,
I
think there's 2 separate areas about this performance from Rees-Zammit. I thought watching it live, like my reflection on it live, the way I put it, was I thought he played well, but like a dickhead. Like I put some blue sky that I think I struggled to remember a more selfish performance from an individual player.
Yeah.
You look at the break where he didn't give the ball twice to Thomas Williams, who was in support.
That really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because the break itself is brilliant.
It's brilliant.
The sort of thing only Lewis Rees-Zammit can
exactly,
do.
Yeah.
There's not really another player in Wales who has that level of acceleration. A lot of players who'd back themselves a little bit, sure, but he breaks through the line. It's absolutely outstanding. And he looks to his right a little bit, and Thomas Williams is there, who is not just a player, a body who's on his feet and unmarked, but he's also like Wales' best player and probably the fastest outside of Rees-Zammit and Blair Murray in the Welsh team. So somebody who stands a very good chance of sprinting 40 metres to score that try. Yeah. And Rees-Zammit doesn't pass the ball. And then after that, even when he wins the contact and stays on his feet, stumbles a little bit, he still then doesn't go right.
He doesn't even look.
No,
he doesn't even look for the ball.
Now. I think
you can see Thomas Williams' mouth's opening. He's calling for the ball.
I think he's then transferring the ball into that arm so he can offload it out the bag because it looks nice and it makes him look like a better rugby player.
I don't think he's even looking for it. Yeah. I think he's just purely focusing on himself.
It's really frustrated me as a Welsh fan. It just made me think he prioritised himself and his glory over the team.
He also went for a chip kick that wasn't on at all in a moment of like, I'm the dog's bollocks.
Yeah.
Fine, whatever. You forget about them because they're chances he created himself. That first one.
Yeah.
Fine. It's
100%.
incredibly frustrating. But there's also this, when I watched it back a second time, Japan really smartly targeted the fact that he is not a particularly hard worker when there isn't glory on the line, right?
Yeah.
He's a great tackler and a brilliant kick chase if he thinks there's a chance of scoring.
Same as what was said about Damian Pinot the other week. If he might score off it, if he might benefit off it, properly. Yeah. If the stakes are high, then he'll go after it. Whereas,
repeatedly, we saw Wales hang high balls like this, and he just this one, he chases way too far. Yazaki takes it completely uncontested, and then critically, he can land and make a decision once he gets down because Rees-Zammit isn't even in his face. He either wants to slow down or just judge the ball properly. Every single kick chase Wales sent Rees-Zammit on, he misjudged the ball. He didn't go up for one properly. He was always off the mark, either too far or too soon, whatever. And none
saw
of them,
the whole of the moon.
Every single time, he also went up for the ball. He never just set back on his heels and waited for the tackle. He never accepted that it was there. It was a very much I want to win it back in the air, full on. A couple of times he did manage to get there.
Again, that's not always a bad thing in isolation.
A couple of times he did manage to get there, but he knocked one on when he got there. However, the bigger problem was a few times Japan hung this ball. I think it's really smart identification from Eddie Jones in Japan. And they just looked to hang it behind the Welsh defensive line. Because Blair Murray is set so deep and Dan Ed's also set so deep, they hang it a bit further and they want Lewis Rees-Zammit as the turning player to get back. Except in these chances, all 3 times Japan hung it, Rees-Zammit just sauntered back. And if he harries back a bit sooner, he gets there easily and regathers it. All 3 times Japan win the ball back in the air.
Yeah.
And it just became a bit of an issue when you also had Josh Adams, who had a real off game. And then obviously goes on to do the thing that he does.
Yeah, which is really stupid.
Just really dumb.
Yeah. Don't put your shoulders near players' heads.
But Adams also consistently goes into, instead of tapping the ball back, to catch the ball himself, right?
Yeah.
And, he caught one, he regathered one and knocked it backwards, but he also dropped one cold. And that's always a risky strategy now that everyone else is going up to tap back. Yeah. So that's an element of this. Wales' strategy, generally across the field, is to always, similar to the 2019 Springboks, I'd say, always keep moving forward with momentum. And obviously they have this kind of Matt Sherratt attack, which is very dynamic and everyone moving in pieces or whatever. However, it's very high energy and you require an awful lot of your players. And so the rest of the game plan kind of conserves energy. And what's the easiest way to move upfield is to box kick, try and win it back in the air or cause an error. So they're looking to do that and always be moving forward. And it also means the defence is less well set for Matt Sherratt to run that attack off it. He isn't running himself, for Ben Thomas to run and Dan Eds to run that attack, right?
Yeah.
So the game plan is built around this kick strategy being good. And consistently, Dan Edwards and Thomas Williams were hanging really good kicks. And the chase by Adams, by Murray and by Rees-Zammit was not good enough.
Yeah. And then you flip that on its head as well. From the Japanese perspective, their kicking game was superb.
Yeah.
And what I really like is Japan, wherever they are on the park, unless they're on their own 5-metre line, I guess, they will keep the tempo pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And that they will use that fast-paced kind of attack that fast ruck speed that they have to feed their kicking game, which is great because it kept Wales second guessing. As you say, that backfield for Wales didn't really know how to stand a lot of the time, even when the kicks were quite slow. Obviously, the ball is high in the air, there's a lot of hang time on it, takes a long time to get to the floor. But at that point, Wales are still scrambling and trying to figure out where to go. Naoto Saito had a brilliant game at 9. Thought he controlled things really well, he kicked brilliantly, and again, just like organised his forwards really well. Seung-Shun Lee, or Lee Seung-Shun at 10 rather, was really good. Again, he organised everything. I was surprised by the variation of his kicking game, I suppose, because he prefers to kick long downfield, and we speculated that he might go a little bit more aerial than he has in pass for Japan, and he did that brilliantly. It really worked. And then when they got moving forward, just the Japanese pack were brilliant. Makisi played really well at 8. I thought his work rate was much higher than a lot of games we've seen in the past for him before, where he was just getting loads and loads of carries. That's what he's good at.
He covered the Michael Leach role. You barely noticed Michael Leach was missing.
Yeah.
Because he was excellent. Shimakawa, as we talked about in the preview quite a lot, covered a lot of ground as well.
Warner Dearns is world class.
Yes.
He is so good. He's such a handful in terms of carrying. And again, he might be one of the best just clear out merchants on his own ball of any player in World Rugby. He is just incredible. And just every single impact he had, like Wales couldn't get near the Japanese ball.
The way a few times Japan kind of dropped him into the 13 position. And Dylan Riley quite had a really good game watching it back. Like, first time you didn't notice that too many touches, had one outside break. But like watching it back, the way he straightens the line, the way he'll just involve himself, or he'll come on a long arcing line. Riley. He's excellent. But Warner Dearns, likewise, can sometimes be used then in that 13 role, and it allows Riley a little bit more time if he wants to come in and either run short lines off him, or be the guy distributing and having Dearns outside him. It's less of an edge forward and more like you're straight up using him as a forward centre, which for a second row is pretty intense.
It's remarkable.
So I
Not
thought,
many players, certainly in the men's game, who are like that.
Yeah. Japan's attack, very good. To say, obviously, this Welsh defence is still setting up and obviously hasn't caused too many problems to teams like Argentina. But the way they defend is set up to target teams like Japan, who play high phase count, and they basically, Wales will come up a few steps, and then this is the Tandy defence, same as in Scotland. They'll then sit off, and they're happy for you to make 2 or 3 metres because they've come up 5 metres incredibly hard, and then they kind of stay connected. They're really hard for a team like Japan to break down because they're just always lots of bodies on their feet, right? And it's easier for Japan to pick off a defence like the Springboks or someone. Obviously, I talked about the Springboks and kind of the physicality will struggle with that, but a defence who is more aggressive, who is getting up in their feet, is what that Japan team's trying to target. A team like Wales and Scotland's defence, that is more difficult for them.
There's a phrase, fast 5, which means your first 5 steps when you're coming up out the blocks, out of the line, are as fast as you physically can go. You don't care about what's going to go on your inside or your outside. You're just head down and or head up, I guess, and you're running as hard as you can. And from there on out, you look up and you think about what's going on.
Just stay connected. Make sure you know who's inside and who's outside you, where you're standing the defensive line, what your role is, whether you're drifting, whether you're pushing up any further.
I also just want to say on Japan, just like we kind of touched on it there, just how insanely good their back 3 were. That Tomoki Asada and Kipe Ishida on the wings, both brilliant in terms of aerially how much purchase they were getting, like getting off the floor and catching those balls or putting pressure on at the very least. Defensively, absolutely outstanding. And with the ball in hand, they are both players that you think of as do like crazy outside breaks and stuff. But in this game, because of the way Wales defend, that they go hard then soft, instead of trying to do anything risky and go on the outside, they'll just keep hold of the ball and making sensible decisions, and then or sometimes putting good kicks in or going, running it hard, whatever it was. And I just think there was a real maturity to how both of those played.
Agreed.
As well as that, like Yazaki, I think was one of the best players on the park.
I thought Yazaki was outstanding.
There was nothing Wales tried managed to face him or put any pressure on him.
This has sort of been the game I've been waiting for him to have.
That
he looked like a really talented young kid. But this was the game where it felt like he matured and he became a proper international.
He's an international rugby player rather than like a wonder kid.
He didn't look like a promising youngster. He looked like he arrived. This felt like the game. He was so good on the high ball, but he's so dangerous and electric whenever he gets it, whenever he's going forward. He hit a few really great lines, picked off some gaps, a couple of counter-attacks, and even when he just like takes it and is just smashing it up, you know. And also really strong kicking game on him as well. I thought Ishida played very well. I thought Asada played very well as well. But Yazaki for me was like a real standout at the backs division for Japan in particular.
I think so. I think again, like when they do the Player of the Match nominees and this, like Warner Dearns absolutely, Yazaki 100% right up there. And there's a couple of Welsh players who we should talk about.
Ollie Cratton and Alex Mann were the 2 standouts for me. I thought both were excellent in the back row.
100%. There's another one that we will talk about in a moment. Alex Mann I absolutely love because he's just nails. He's just like some absolute mentalist from Cardiff who's brilliant.
He feels like a Ponty player from the 80s who's dropped through time, who's just somehow landed in the modern day.
Yeah, there's a time capsule with Alex Mann left in there.
He's just learned you can't ruck and you can't bite people. And he's like, oh, okay, I can still punch them though.
Yeah,
and he almost did a few times this weekend.
He's play acting as a modern rugby player, but he is absolutely brilliant.
It's crazy that Ollie Crichton's the second hardest player on your team.
Yeah. He was brilliant in terms of just, again, every carry.
24 tackles, 19 carries. Those are ridiculous stats.
You can't ask for much more than that for somebody on the first start for Wales.
First start, first home game. Yeah. Well, first home start, yeah.
But interesting, I think it demonstrates maybe the difference between most important player and player of the match.
Yes.
Ollie Crichton, as you mentioned, that work rate being just insanely high. But for me, the guy who absolutely carried Wales on his back was Thomas Williams.
Yes.
In the absence of Jack Morgan, it's just so fitting, the two Lions that they've got in their team, or the two 2025 Lions they've got in their team. And yeah.
Couldn't leave Adam Beard out of this.
Yeah, sorry, and Rees-Zammit and Josh Adams.
Nick Tompkins? Oh no.
No, not quite. But there's another tour in 4 years' time. But Thomas Williams, absolutely outstanding. Obviously, his kicking game is really important. Again, what I really like is he's helping Dan Edwards so hard in his first few games of international rugby. He's really looking after him, and anything that is pressurised, because Tom Williams is just that kind of player who's really cool under pressure and is really nonchalant in everything he does, that he's just saying to Dan Edwards clearly, let me deal with it as much as I physically can and just focus on running the attack. Just focus on doing what makes you a good player rather than anything that. And the thing is, Dan Edwards, we see at the Ospreys, he does manage games and all that sort of stuff, but he's not been asked any of that yet because he has more time with the Ospreys where he can do that himself and he can become that player. But yeah, Thomas Williams, as I say, his kicking game, absolutely outstanding. But a feeling that I've not experienced much as a Welsh supporter in the last few years is whenever Wales did get those opportunities, like a penalty in the opposition half to kick into opposition 22 and get sort of within 20 odd metres of the line, I actually felt this weird calm of, you know what, if Wales are close to the line, there is a decent chance of them scoring a try as long as they have Thomas Williams on the pitch, because his selection of passes makes it so hard to defend. And both the try for Lewis Rees-Zammit and the try for Nick Tompkins came as a result.
They're purely Thomas.
Yeah.
They're purely Thomas.
All the other 14 players are moving parts off Thomas Williams. And even Dan Edwards, he doesn't play really as a fly half in the opposition 22. He plays as a rugby player.
The 3 Wales tries, the only time Dan Edwards touches the ball in any of those sets is when he goes over to score his own try.
Yeah.
All the others are purely left on Thomas Williams' shoulders. And that is not to say he's doing the thing Dan Biggar used to do, which is they play off 9 in the 22 under Gatland 1.0, but Biggar or Anscombe would sit back and be the quarterback and kind of order players around and set shape and so on and wait for the opportunity to pull the trigger, which is the thing, France do incredibly well. They play a lot of 9.
Yeah.
Instead, Dan Edwards is coming in and just being a rugby player, right? So we see him he comes in and runs a really great short line on the blind side before Nick Tompkins goes over and scores. And this just helps shorten the line. It causes Japan to sit up and be like, okay, the 10's coming in fast and hard. So we will just go, okay, it's going this way. Bam, they're not looking the other way. Massive skip pass with 2 forward runners coming off it. Brilliant ball by Thomas Williams, and Nick Tompkins goes over.
Yeah, it's the sort of line you expect your fullback to run, isn't it? Of just creating an extra man in the line. Yeah. Because as you say, you use the word quarterback there. That's Thomas Williams. It's not Dan Edwards. Dan Edwards isn't interested in calling plays here unless he sees something blatantly obvious. Same with the Rees-Zammit try. The way that they have a few times they go for what looks like a skip pass, but is a relatively short ball. And just they're tightening up this Japanese D until eventually he goes full Aaron Smith on this. It's brilliant. And goes and skips all the way out to the wing, all the way out to Rees-Zammit. And again, he doesn't do a floated pass over the top Gibson Park style. He goes, it's such a flat ball here. It's such a hard thing to defend because Wales play so differently in the 22 to outside of it. Outside of it, one of the it's not an issue with the Wales attack, but one of the reasons why they're not making clean breaks is because often it takes a lot of time. Yes. It's not that they're making incorrect decisions, they just take a lot of time in terms of maybe they're stood a little bit too deep or too flat, or the passes are a little bit, lethargic. Who knows? There could be various reasons for that. Or maybe the ball's a bit slow and it takes a bit long to get from 9 to its eventual destination. Whereas here, everything's coming off 9. Yeah. And so it's going straight to the destination within a second.
I think Wales are kind of showing themselves how they need to play. I think they need to play much more off 9. Yeah. And obviously that is keeping the option open to play off 10 and for Dan Eds to be, and for Jarrod Evans and potentially Counter Series if he comes in, to be playing as well and taking over at odd times. But they need to be playing more ball off 9.
It's
and a bit of setting up.
Yeah.
I want to look at one particular passage, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Around 26 minutes, where we see, I think, an example of the limitations of Matt Sherritt's attack here, because he is a club coach, right? He's been a club coach his entire life and has now been parachuted up to international rugby. And
against his will.
Yeah, at times in the Six Nations, obviously both looked like he had a sniper on him and was like, just get me back to my kids and family. I do not want to be here. But at times, Wales' attack was really good in the Six Nations. It was obviously an improvement on what they were doing under Howley and Gatland. But also, there were big points when they looked like a club team, right, in that place. And I want to pull out this particular passage, right, where they run off Dan Eds first. He delivers a flat ball. It's nice. They're going forward. They're getting going. They run a flat ball black on the blind side, and they bring Dan Eds round to run in the boot, just in case it's off. And they bring Dan Eds round to run in the boot here, just in case it's on, to tip it out the back and sling it over to the wing. This is something that we know Matt Sherritt loves, is options, right? He wants every play to have like 2 bailout options of we can go wide or we can go short, we can go hit, we can go boot. That doesn't happen, so Wales just carry up. And then from this position, they then run another play back on the blind side, where now they're looking to get to width and go 2 pairs of hands out the boot. Dan Ed slings it wide to the wing. They ran this play a couple of times during the game. They hit Ben Thomas. He slings it out the back. Dan Eds then, bam, wide ball over. Simple enough. However, because the speed of ball is so much faster at international level, that ball is getting there before Dan Edwards can physically get back into shape. So he is a split second late and Japan pick off an intercept and make some 20, 30 metres. That is purely because the ball is too fast for the way Wales play. Yeah. So either they need to slow the ball down, which we saw happen a few times. We slowed the game down to wait for their team to be set, or they need to be running patterns that are weirdly less ambitious than Matt Sherritt would run at club level because they don't have as much time. And Jamie Roberts said this on commentary, right? Speed over shape. Yeah. Like, so often, if you can run fast, you beat teams who are waiting to get into shape. And Wales are too focused on getting into shape. And maybe, once these players know these patterns better inside out, we will see them getting there faster. But at the minute, Wales are weirdly trying to either play perfect shape or too fast. And it's kind of leading to this disconnect.
I completely agree, speed over shape. Like, I think there are 1,000 different ways to play rugby, and none of them are best played slow at all times. Obviously, there are certain exceptions to this, I guess, in terms of, like, when Chile were in the World Cup and they slowed it down to frustrate the opposition. Like, there are things like that exist, but I think at high levels of rugby, like, I definitely think speed over shape. But it's interesting with this, because you mentioned there, like, a lot of people will ask questions like, why don't Wales just play exactly the same all over the park like they do in the 22? And the fact is that it's not really that possible, because when you're in the 22, or let's say, for those 2 tries, for the Murray and Zammit tries, at that point, Wales don't need to make a clean line break. They just need to make 5 metres. Yeah. They need to get over the gain line 2 or 3 times. And they did on those opportunities. They got over the gain line at every single phase to eventually score those tries. It's really different from outside the 22, which is why they're playing off 10 a little bit more.
What I'm thinking is you maybe need to start playing that slightly further back, right?
Yeah.
35 metres.
You stretch it to within 30 metres of the try line, maybe, rather than just 10. Yeah. But it's quite interesting because you think about
and not every time as well. Just as odd occasions.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Variation is really important. And the lead up to the penalty for the final kick of the game was really interesting. I love the way that Jarrod Evans played this. I mean, first and foremost, just before Dan Edwards came off, he had another opportunity, much like the one that you were talking about earlier, where everything was going through Dan Edwards' hands. He's that kind of 10, he likes his hands on the ball. And then eventually he realises he has an opportunity to shorten Japan up here, and he instead calls for the ball to go to Nick Tompkins, so he can then go into the boot and load the pass onto himself. And he changes the shape on the fly, rather than just going straight hands. At that point, Japan can drift, and they can just cover it. And instead, he forces Japan to come up to them a little bit more so they can go through the hands and draw players in. Jarrod Evans here, really similar. Once again, he's getting everything through his hands. He's calling everything through the boot, more or less. He's getting the odd forward carry. And here, instead, he just calls the ball to go straight to Nick Tompkins. He doesn't even slide into the boot. He just gets him to go hands.
But he stays static because he knows Japan will watch for what they just defended, 2 minutes ago?
Yeah. And once again, Jarrod Evans just stays static so he can run that inside line. Obviously, Nick Tompkins isn't going to go for the inside tip to his fly half here on a crash ball. It's shit play, but Japan have to mark it. Yeah. They have to have somebody like physically cover that space. And so instead, Japan have to go cool off a little bit in D. And so everyone in Wales can pick off their man and go hands down the line. Alex Mann gets a run down the wing. Harry Hawkins launches his shoulder into his face once again. And Wales get the penalty, go to the corner, and they get another penalty off this from Japan being 5 metres out from their own try line and slightly panicking and going for desperation to try and get the ball back. Wales get the penalty. Jarrod Evans steps up, cool as you like, and slots it.
Fair play to him coming in immediately. You can see him the moment the referee's arm goes out. He comes in with his arm out like, give me the ball.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock this over.
I'm confident.
And this is the thing, right? At the moment, I was thinking you go for the corner until I saw how confident Jarrod Evans was.
Yeah.
And if your 10 is like that...
Azarati was screaming scrum because they'd melted him in the previous scrum.
But if you're in that position and your 10 is that confident he's going to nail it, you give it to him.
Yeah. 100%
you give it to him.
And fair play to Jarrod Evans. Because he played 90 seconds there. And to have not warmed up, in 80-odd minutes, plus half-time, and to move his way up the field, he clearly just knew, if I come on, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to get us up the field, and then I'm going to kick us the winner. He hadn't kicked a ball yet in that game. He hadn't had a kick to warm up, to practice, to get his legs warm for that final kick of the game. But, as I say, just like ice cold.
Also, there is this temptation. I think Wales are always very bad for it. Someone comes on, makes an impact, you go, start them. No, that's what an impact the sub is there to do, right?
100%.
Danez played really well.
Yeah.
Great job of sort of softening Japan up, of playing tactically.
Trust the process.
Speeding up and everything. Then Jarrod Evans comes on and presents different pictures to the attack. There's a very little example in the one you just pulled, right? Of Danez runs one thing of the same shape, and Jarrod runs a different one in response to what Danez just did.
Yeah.
And if they ran the version that Jarrod ran it all game every time, if they ran that twice in a row, Japan would cover it. If they ran the version that Danez ran twice in a row, Japan would cover it. That's the point in bringing your players on, bringing impact players on. It's having those players who can come in and change the picture the defence is looking at.
Yeah.
And also provide that kind of impact and that kind of confidence to go, bam, no, give it to me, I'm going to slot this, and then do that.
If somebody says, I think this player should start, it doesn't equate to, I think they are better than the other player for a full 80 minutes of the game as an option to have on the pitch.
Yeah.
Not at all. You know. And Jarrod Evans, I think that was Dan Bigger was full of praise for him at full time, just saying that was a real coming of age moment for him. And he's been playing really well in the Premiership for Harlequins. But that felt like, when you're that confident and ice cold at international level, fair play, he really deserves all the praise he's getting for that 2-minute cameo.
Absolutely. So this leaves Wales in a weird spot, because that is a big positive. They now head into New Zealand and South Africa, and maybe we'll talk about those to come.
Yeah. Do you agree that Japan were the better team?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Which is a compliment to Wales for the fact they won it.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. Look, winning whilst playing badly is 8 steps ahead of where this team should be.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, 100%.
So that's a huge positive.
Yeah.
And I know, obviously, Tandy, and I've seen plenty of people saying that the performance was worse than last week, and that probably is true.
Yeah.
But also, this was progress. This was a step forward because they won.
Yeah.
Right? And they haven't been doing that, even against teams they are playing better than.
Yeah.
We saw a few times, they played better than Australia in one of those games on tour last year. They still lost. They played better than Georgia for most of that game the other year. They still lost. This team got very good at losing games where they are the better team.
100%.
And so, Argentina in the World Cup, they were the better team for 40, 50 minutes of that game, and then Scotland did it.
They did enough to win that game.
Yeah.
100%.
And so, them to actually come through and not play that well and win this, and we haven't talked that much about Japan, I apologise, but, I still think they're building something interesting. I still like the look of what they're doing, and I still think it could go somewhere from here.
Again, you never know what Eddie's got up his sleeve and how much time it was going to take him to build that.
Did you see, and this is maybe the point to leave it on, Eddie Jones's comments post-game in the press conference?
Hit me.
I want to read this verbatim, word for word, as they reported. He was asked about the last 5 minutes and what it was like to lose the game in that manner. And he said, I wanted to kill somebody. I couldn't find somebody. Anyone I could find, I want to kill them.
What?
If I had a gun, I would have.
What? That's a hell of an admission to make. Live, publicly. Oh my goodness.
He says, look, I'm only joking, but that's how it felt. It's tough to lose in the last 5 minutes. The ground here is electric.
Good save, Eddie. Good save. Who do you think he'd have gone for?
Anybody he could find.
Yeah,
look, there's a stadium of 79,000 people there.
Yeah. He found himself in the vicinity of a lot of people. Blimey, that's a lot.
He could start Glenn Murray.
Yeah. Oh, that's harsh.
He probably couldn't catch the bullet, though.
Yeah.
You just miss him. It just bounced off him.
Yeah. Okay, so to close this
I didn't mean to say he died, but I pulled him purely because of he couldn't catch a high ball joke, so the bullet would miss him. I wasn't saying we should shoot Glenn Murray.
Okay, yeah, you weren't suggesting capital punishment for dropping a few rugby balls.
No, I wasn't. Very much not.
Okay.
Though that haircut he pulled out for the Scarlets a few weeks ago, maybe is worth capital punishment.
Last thing I want to say on this game. So last week, after the Argentina game, we gave Wales 2 work-ons for this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So one of them was sort that shoddy backfield out. They have not achieved that. If anything, they've got worse on that. The other one was don't kick anyone in the head. And they've achieved that this week. However, they did still shoulder someone in the head. Yeah. So I think that actually goes on the list instead of kicking someone in the head. So just
generally leave heads alone?
Yeah. No contact with the head.
Yeah.
And don't injure anybody in the head in a way that could get you sent off and that's bad. Just don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Just leave heads. Leave no heads. Leave them alone.
My other work on for Wales, my other key area that I think they can really improve on for next week is don't let the All Blacks into the ground. Just lock Gatland's gate.
Lock them out.
Just lock them outside.
Yeah, that sounds
Walk
good.
over by default. Yeah. First win since 1956.
All right. We most likely won't do a preview for the All Blacks
we'll
game.
See,
or we might do. Either way, just don't worry about it.